You're listening to the Bombad Generals.
General? Oh.
We're back. There we go. New tradition, starting and ending. It'll be a Gungan sandwich on episodes. Not only are Weesa back for another episode, Weesa back for 2024. Welcome, Seth. Hello, hello.
Hello. Happy New Year, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
And to all of our listeners and watchers out there.
I got to experience... I've lived more 2024 than you have at this point because of the time zone difference. So
I consider you
myself
a wiser man right now.
Exactly. I'm a veteran of the year. Which is important because like those extra 7 hours proportionally are pretty high when we're only a few days into the year. But
this is true.
No one cares about that, I don't think. You know what the people care about, Seth?
Winning.
Yes. Epic winning. In the words of my idol, Charlie Sheen, epic winning. And the way you win is by listening to Bombad Generals and learning about turn -1.
Yes.
Yeah. We took a break. Yeah, we're going back to our regular series on the battle cards. I did really enjoy, I did have a good time on our last episode, so if people skipped it for whatever reason, I'd say go back if you want list ideas.
Yes. It was a good Life Day celebration about gifts and the spirit of Life Day. It was really nice. Yeah.
I haven't gotten a chance to play since Seth ghosted me. He told me after that podcast, I'll be pretty free if you want to get a game in the week after Christmas. And I think I messaged you like Boxing Day or something to try to set something up that week. Well,
Probably.
let me look. I really got to throw you under the bus here.
Do it. Please do.
It would have been the morning of December 27th for you that you received the message. Seth ghosted me. That's okay because honestly, I was busy with other stuff in the end, just chilling, enjoying life. So I haven't gotten a chance to test out those lists that we talked about, but it's still on my to-do list because I do think there were some spice in there.
Yes.
From both sides.
Yes.
But again, that's not what we're talking about today. Seth, what 3 battle cards do we have lined up?
Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about 3 very unique, very awesome battle cards. Major or offensive, Minefield, and Vaps are actually not that unique because there's not a big variety of battle cards, but this is what 8?
1 of 8. They make up 12.5% of all the battle cards. That's not that much.
No.
I feel like we should leave Vaps for the end. There's gonna be a rant in there probably.
A good rant.
Maybe start with the second spiciest, which is Minefield. My question to you: when was the last time you played a game of Minefield, Seth?
It's probably early 2023.
Okay.
So about last year. About a year.
Well, yeah. Okay. Honestly, I don't remember the last time I played a game of Minefield. Maybe I played one in 2023.
I think it was against you that I played it. Yes, I think we were prepping
in my
for
deck?
Worlds. Yes, I think you were we were prepping for Worlds and you were doing I think I was playing Blizzard Force and you were playing Double Darks.
Okay, this makes sense because you don't usually run Minefield, do you?
No.
Yeah, and
so
I
it was
basically never run Minefield.
My deck?
It must have been in your deck because speeder list. I wouldn't want it because impact. I don't want crit impacts.
Yes, that's right. I brought it.
Oh, and actually that does remind me. I played Minefield also before Worlds against Blizzard with Double Darks when I was playing. I played a prep game against Kyle. Because that was when Kyle was like just off of his LVO win with Blizzard. And then they were like, oh, we're not going to nerf Blizzard still. And everyone was like, oh, darn. And we were just discovering the power of Darks. So we were both trying to learn, like, if you take the regular awesome Blizzard Force and put that against Dark Troopers, is Impact 10 or whatever enough to deal with them? And then we found out the answer was no. Dark Troopers were really, really good. So yes, that was also a Minefield game.
Yes.
I guess
it's been about a year.
Okay, yeah. I've played it more recently than I thought. It's just one that I don't know. I feel like I don't encounter it a whole lot, just because I never put it in my deck. So that's already a decent amount of games that it's not going to show up in.
Yes.
But that kind of gives us an idea of where it does show up, which I would say is mainly speeder lists, because they're repulsors that don't trigger bombs, and it makes it hard for an enemy gun line to move up towards you.
Yeah, see like speeder lists or like double AA5 lists.
True, because they're hover ground, so they're still repulsors that wouldn't trigger the mines. Or they can now. Well, with the CRB changed, you can they can overlap it now, and no one gets line of sight to it. So that's good, because that was a big change that came with the CRB. Before, they were like objective tokens that you couldn't overlap.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, I think maybe another reason why I don't remember Minefield all that much is because a lot of the time it just feels a little inconsequential, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's very consequential. For example, in that game against Kyle, when it was breakthrough and I was trying to send all my chaff around the outside. Look at the first episode of this series if you want to know about how to play breakthrough against a speeder list, because that's what I was doing. I was in the middle of the board, his units were off to my right, and I was trying to send all the weak stuff around left. There was one bomb there, and like round one, it was like, mortar, dodge, move, doesn't trigger the bomb. Mortar, dodge, move, nothing. Shore, dodge, move, nothing. Other shore, dodge, move, nothing. Officer, dodge, move, nothing. First activation of the next round, double explosion, and it hit everything twice.
That's rough.
And so it's very min-maxy sometimes, but usually towards the minimum side, I find.
I agree.
Which is probably why it's not super memorable for me.
Yeah,
they do have blast.
Memorable
They've got impact, surge to crit. You know what? I will take back one thing actually, as far as speeder lists. I'll add a list. I'll add a list to the list. Good wordsmithing there. I'll add a 800-point army to the list of armies that would potentially take it, which is situational dodge spam, I would say.
Okay, I can see that.
Because, back when I was playing Pikes, I probably actually ran Minefield, because you start with a bajillion dodges, you'll walk onto a mine, and if it explodes, whatever. 2 crits, okay, I dodge it. Or very, very worst case, you can always... Here, well, I guess we'll kind of get into tricks. You can... depending where the mines are placed, you can use an LOS blocker, or maybe not even. You don't even necessarily need an LOS blocker, but ideally, you can LOS block so that only one guy can see the mine.
Yep. Because
mine tokens, it's reverse LOS, so it's from the unit to the token. So you don't have to get on the table and try to see what the token can see. If only one guy can see it, you can only suffer 1 wound.
Yeah.
So if the mine double explodes, and it gets 2 natty crits and you roll 2 blanks, you just remove that guy, and then the second explosion, it doesn't hit you. That's the ideal form.
That's ideal.
Now, let's say that happens. You can't stay out of LOS. Still, it's nice to only put the one guy in, because then if you take a wound, you just pull him out, and everything's good.
Mm-hmm.
It can kind of suck if you forward cohere a guy and then the mine doesn't kill him, because then maybe your enemy comes and shoots him. So just kind of read the situation.
Yeah,
I would say on that one. But that's just another way as a gun line to kind of try and make the mines feel inconsequential. And then you're kind of just down to, does it explode? Does it not explode? And honestly, you kind of want them to explode. If I could just have every mine explode the first time I triggered it, I'd be so much happier.
That'd be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, because you would just... As the player who wants to get the mines out of the way the quickest, I just want to send a random guy in, mine sweep, boom, done, whatever.
Yeah. Now, on the opposite side, when placing mines, I would say try not to put them by line of sight blockers so that your opponent cannot do that.
And I try to put them not necessarily right near their deployment. I think a lot of the time, people put them close enough to the deployment that you can easily trip them turn 1, and turn 1 you might not be taking many shots from the opponent anyways, so you can kind of dodge up and take your time and it doesn't hurt you. Versus if you have it, let's say it's an intercept game or something, I don't know, key positions. If you have it up close to that middle objective but kind of on their side, then they can't trip it without getting close to you. So that's good. So they don't really want to trip it early if they're range controlling. But then when they actually need to rush the middle, then they have to go through the mine, and then maybe it has a bit more consequence. It's just you're trying to make it so that the mines, whenever they get tripped, it has consequences.
Yes. Yeah. So why don't you take it, Matt?
Like, why would I want to take it these days? I don't know. I haven't played situational spam in a while. So with pikes, obviously, or situational clones, great. With like the Yoda clones that I was just playing, it's really only gonna hurt me. Actually, that's another point I want to bring up. It has a lot of scout, that list. And if you have a list with a ton of scout, you probably don't want mines either, because they can be triggered off of deployment. And in something like the Yoda list especially, you don't have your dodge tokens in deployment, you don't have your surge tokens. If you deploy carefully, you could have Guardian and Barrier, but then you're using those like before the game even starts. Yeah. Which is not ideal. And again, you're rolling red normal saves versus red surging. So if you have a list that really wants to scout up and go hard, I would suggest against something like Minefield.
I'd agree with that.
But there have been times I've purposely tripped mines in deployment because I have like, I don't know, a Rebels and Chewie or whatever, and put Chewie down. He just Guardians if it blows up, and then I can kind of not worry about it in the game.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Now, like, do you think for Minefield, it's like it's very reliant on dice, and my opponent could have like really like dice that favors them, and then like I have dice that like doesn't favor me on a Minefield, so I just try not to take it.
Yeah.
Because like it's not a reliable like condition for me. It's kind of like supply drop, which we'll probably, I guess we'll talk about in a future episode, where the balance on which it helps or hinders both players is kind of random. Yes.
And sometimes that's good for you, and a lot of times that's not necessarily good for you. So for me, I think a lot of the time it's how much confidence do you have in yourself. For me, I have a lot of confidence in myself that I can probably get a skill advantage in a decent number of games. And if I have the skill advantage, I want less randomness, because a lot of what randomness does is it shrinks that advantage. If we stand here and we flip a coin, we could have all the skill in the world and it doesn't matter. It's just whatever the coin happens to come up, assuming no one's cheating and it's unweighted. But yeah, that's what variance does. It shrinks that gap. And I don't like that happening. But I guess I still take, I don't actually take. Well, that's a thing for another. When we get to supply drop, we'll talk about that one. I like
supply drop, but we'll talk about that later.
I think I take supply drop a lot more than Minefield, just because I think it's kind of controllable variance.
It's true.
More in a sense, and Minefield's kind of like that too. If you can control the variance, and that's what situational spam does, or speeders or whatnot, you can kind of control. Hey, if the dice go crazy, that's fine. I don't really care.
Yeah.
I guess too, the other thing with Minefield is they have to go range 2 apart from one another. So if you kind of place and you go one, you alternate. So depending how you place, it's pretty easy to kind of hem one of them out of the game from the get-go. It's not too unusual to have like one of each player's mines unexploded by the end of the game.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, yeah. I mean, I haven't played a ton of Minefield with snipers since the well, I guess it doesn't really change with the new CRB, honestly, but that's another way maybe to use mines, is just if they've got snipers, try to put it in sniping nests where they might kind of be alone, and not be able to clear the mine. And now it's like, I don't want to go snipe there. But I guess that would have been same pre-CRP. And I don't know if it ever was really effective at that. So maybe I'm just making things up.
So you're talking about like as a counter to those lists, not necessarily
as a counter to those lists. Yeah. If you have Minefield or something and you're placing your mines, maybe try to put it where you think they're going to have a lone sniper flanking you or something like that. Because if they take a wound from the mine, it's going to be a lot more annoying for that sniper who they're going to be much more exposed.
That's fair.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's it for Minefield.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's take it if you want. It's kind of one of those that after you put in 2 or 3 conditions, you're kind of thinking, do I want to spend my last condition card on Minefield? Maybe not.
Maybe.
But it's kind of always for me like 5th or 6th probably.
Yeah,
never quite makes the cut, but it's always it's never really the worst.
Yeah.
Major offensive. Here, I'll do the screen share again. I think the people spoke and they said they loved it. And I'm definitely not making that up. I'm not making that up at all.
The people
I would never do that. Yeah, they said, Matt, you're very good looking. And
we need to like call like our fans like a like the Gungans.
The Gungans, yeah. I think that would be it. I was going to say the boyos, but I want to be gender inclusive, so... Yeah,
we'll figure that another time. We'll talk about major events.
No, I think we need to stop the podcast right now and figure it out. But major offensive, you get halfway up the table on your nearest side, and you get range 1 across that side. Bottom right, basically you're deploying in your respective bottom right corners. And a quarter of the way up the table, range 3, you get a little range 3 box. Yeah. So you have like this kind of L thing going on. The corners of the deployment zone at that range 3 box happen to be the exact spots where you set up intercept points as well. They're the 2 non-central intercept points if you happen to be playing that game. So it speeds up setup time a bit. What do you have to say about major offensive, Seth?
First thing, it looks like my home state, Oklahoma.
Yeah, that is true.
I call it the Oklahoma. But what's the range from the corners? So like from the...
Oh, you're asking me to do trigonometry.
Yes, I think it's about range 3. It's just over range 3.
Here, let me do some math here, because that side is going to be range 2, and that's going to be range 3. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Remember that.
That's just geometry. That's not trigonometry.
Trigonometry is... I mean, isn't that just geometry with triangles? I don't know.
Maybe.
It's been a long time since I studied anything. 13, square root of 13 is going to be like 3 and a bit.
Yes, so just over range 3.
So
yeah. Okay, so on both corners. So I like this if you're really good at like range control. Like it has some cool like range control tricks that you could do. It's not like there's not like a lot of tricks, I would say, like that this.
I feel like I make a lot of use of different spots on the deployment zone on major offensive, depending on what the game is. Because sometimes you do go in that very central location. Sometimes you're kind of in that on the corner of the box.
I find myself more in the central location.
Generally, yes, I think I would agree there.
Just because, like, we always talk about like wanting to be in the middle of the board.
I think the thing I like about major offensive is it gives you options. So you could go from the middle upwards, or you could go, from the tip of your box where that intercept point is and left.
Yeah.
And
so I think
it's not too far. It's a little closer if you go from the middle, but depending on how the terrain is, you might you've got decent options on how to attack the middle while staying in cover or out of line of sight.
Yeah, this is a very flexible, I think it's a very good like deployment card for like a slower game like intercept or key positions, because it gives you options. If you want to be aggressive up front, you can do that. But if you want to like just hang back and still just like slow roll it, you can also do that. And it gives you very flexible deployment options for that.
Yeah, and I think too, games often feel pretty good on major offensive because I think we discovered pretty early as a community that if you kind of imagine major offensive as the deployment and set up terrain with that in mind, basically you kind of set it up assuming that bottom right to top left angle, because that's the most common angle in the game. If you kind of set terrain up on that angle, it's the most useful as far as being usable to get behind, pop out, use for cover, or stay out of LOS. And it's just generally, I'd say the terrain is favorable versus something like battle lines because of angles of terrain and angles of deployment. It can be hard not to get flanked. Major offensive, I think, it's a little easier to prevent flanks just because of how the terrain is often set up. And I don't think that's like a mistake. I think that's actually a good way to make tables because that bottom right to top left line is so common. It just so happens that major offensive is kind of the epitome of that. So it really likes it when you set up terrain like that. But I think it's still a good method of terrain setup, to be clear.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people like it's like battle lines, like that's the most basic deployment. But like, I mean, measuring wise, yes. But like, I think how the game operates, this is the most basic deployment.
Correct. Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, if I'm doing like a learning game, I'll do battle lines because it's just like, take a ruler and deploy there. But from a tactics perspective, I think that's kind of like the vanilla. And when I'm on other deployments, if I'm running, often I'll try to kind of deploy like it was major offensive in a way, getting those same angles. Mm-hmm. But it sounds like we both like it, which is not always sometimes we have some disagreement because of the kind of lists we like to run, the speeders guy and the gunlines guy. So clearly we're both getting, we both find things we like. So you included in your Yoda tree list?
I do not. I don't.
Okay, so you like it, but it doesn't make the cut.
I like it, but like it's too vanilla for me for how I operate. I don't want a vanilla game.
Oh, that's where we're different. That's why we're going to talk about Vaps.
I do have Vaps in my bag.
Yes, because you don't make it vanilla, but that's just a teaser. I love vanilla. I love vanilla in a sense. I'm always talking about spicy, but I like it's vanilla is the base on which you can build other ice creams, right? You start with vanilla and then you add stuff into there. You can add, I don't know,
peanut butter,
chocolate, and strawberry, cups. And then you've got Neapolitan, or you add in some mint.
Ooh, Neapolitan. That's a debate. Do you start off with the vanilla and Neapolitan, or do you start off with strawberry or chocolate?
Just like other stuff, cookies and cream. Yeah. You kind of start with the vanilla, you add in the cookies. Cookies and cream, goated. Yeah. Great ice cream.
Cookie dough.
Tough to find gluten-free. That's the problem, because cookies obviously. Difficult, but that's why I like it. I like having a vanilla kind of deployment because then it allows me to build upon it with the lists and the gameplay. That's my defense of that. But yeah, it's not necessarily because of I think what I was saying with the flanking and terrain. It's not necessarily ideal for speeders. It feels like, but it's not the worst, I guess, because you kind of. I'll go back to that. Thing you can kind of come around from your box to their central spot or vice versa if need be. So
you have both options to flank if you want.
Yeah,
but
it's not great.
It's harder to flank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it for major offensive.
I think that's exactly. Like I think it's rarely a wrong choice for major offensive. But again, we kind of talked about this with battle lines. One of the things about battle lines is you start far apart, but it shoves the objectives close.
Yeah.
With major offensive, you can keep the objectives very far away if you want.
Yeah.
You can put it in this panhandle and you've got a lot of, it's a bit closer to your enemy, but you've got a lot of guns behind
really
it. Your whole, and then you can put one like really close to just the short edge of the board as well if you want. And it's hard for them to get to.
I think it's the only deployment where you can actually go like full into the board.
Yeah.
like for Vaps or something, where like advanced positions you can't. But this one,
Yeah, you could put touching the board edge if you wanted, for sure.
yeah, I find that this is a very tough objective for like secret mission as well. I mean,
I was about to say the same thing. Yeah, tough. Your best chance is probably if your opponent does what we sometimes do and deploys very centrally.
Yep.
Then maybe you can sneak into the side, kind of going the long way around. But there are better deployments to do that for sure.
For sure.
Alrighty, the time is coming. I forget. Did we show Vaps? Whatever. People can read the Vaps card.
They know it.
They know what Vaps does. People don't like Vaps. Why don't people like Vaps? It goes back to the vanilla thing, doesn't it?
Okay, so this is why. Okay, so people hate tiebreakers. I hate tiebreakers. No one likes tiebreakers, and you can tiebreak very easily on this game.
Yeah.
So I think there's been a lot of people have. I want to say that they don't like playing it. They just may have issues with it.
I think they find it very slow, and it emphasizes the you kind of get punished for aggression sometimes, and a lot of the time in Legion. And like Vaps is a good example of that, because it often tie breaks. Kill points are very important, and the person who makes the first move, who has to be aggressive, often loses more stuff.
Yes.
So it's the people don't like this attacker defender dynamic.
Yeah. And
those people are losers.
I love Vaps.
I love Vaps.
And I
Vaps
think we both
awesome.
love Vaps for different
reasons.
Which is really cool. So you've put it this way before. You said Vaps is like the epitome of like high level Legion. I think I've heard you say this.
I might have said that. Sure, I'll say it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can believe that.
I want you to explain why.
Cool. Vaps, yes. It's funny that you mentioned that, because that also makes me think I said at one point, like, key positions or something is where you can see some of the most technical end games in Legion. So that's also very high level. But I think Vaps is very high level Legion because it's very much a game of marginal advantages and positioning. And maybe we've drifted away a little bit from that. Legion used to be much more marginal, and you would get a small advantage and then try to build on it and snowball and such. Whereas these days it's just like one shot. if you want it to be.
Yeah.
Here I have clones with 5 aims and maybe more, and 20 dice. Boom. There can be a lot of that, but even stuff like that, if you want to get a big fire support off, it's about careful positioning and seizing your moment. And I think that's what Vaps is, because if you're not careful, the moment can certainly pass you by. And this gets into why I think people talk too badly about Vaps, because when they talk about the whole, attacker, the defender's too advantaged and all of that, I have to walk into their guns or whatever, and I'm just going to get torn to pieces. I think a lot of the time people act and talk like your Vaps start tapped.
Yeah.
And they don't. That's the thing. They don't. You actually have to go out and touch them. So even if you're, I guess, kind of blue player, if you're the person who has to get aggressive because your army has less points, you don't have the tiebreaker. It's not like you have to waltz into their gun line once they're sitting and just getting ready for you. You can potentially harass them on that evaporator and make it hard for them to attack it. So that's part of what I mean about seizing your opportunity. Even if it's something else, somewhere else in the game, there's still going to be moments of like, hey, they've positioned that unit poorly, or they went first with this unit, and I can use this entire turn to try to pick off that unit before it can activate again next turn. So there's a lot of that kind of stuff, and I just think it's I like that style of gameplay. And there's also, too, the aspect of, okay, they've tapped their Vaps and they're falling back, but can I annoy them enough that they have to keep falling back, and then I can walk up and tap their Vap? Because like nothing, as much as people hate on Vaps, I want to see people argue that tapping your opponent's Vap turn 6 for the win doesn't feel awesome.
Dude, that's one of the best feelings.
It's a great feeling because, they're like, oh, I don't want to lose this thing. I'll keep moving back. And you're just kind of inching closer. And then suddenly, before they know it, boom, you've taken their VAP. And again, the threat of you taking their VAP means they have to stay close enough that they could potentially lose something, and then you get to hightail it. But if you hightail it and mess up, then maybe they kill your thing, and then you have to reverse hightail it. And it's just these dynamics. It's there's just so much going on of like, you can get punished for being too aggressive, but you can get punished for being too conservative too. So you're kind of always walking this tightrope. That's why I like VAPs and why I think it's that version of Legion, which I like, which is maybe not it's not the only way to play Legion, but I think that's what I fell in love with about Legion and why I play it. It's for those fine margins and that little tactical advantages from placement and taking the opportunities when they present themselves.
Yes. So, can I tell you what a better feeling is?
Okay.
Than tapping on VAPs. At least for me, this is me personally. This is my opinion. A better feeling than tapping a VAP turn 6 is not letting your opponent tap their VAP at all.
Yes, that is a really good feeling.
That's a really good feeling. How I like to play.
Yeah.
So, if you play me, I'm giving you away my tactics. That's okay. We're all here to
we've done a lot of that. That's fine.
But I play very aggressive. And I like VAPs because a lot of people just like to, they feel like they got to walk that tightrope and they got to play conservative and like, oh, it's going to come down to kill points. And I'm like, screw that. I'm going all in on your VAP. So I'm pretty aggressive on my VAP placement. Now, if we're playing Dark Troopers, I'm not going to do this. Let me just tell you that. I'm just gonna. This is more for it depends on the list. Okay,
that's what the Dark Troopers do to you. They just plod along. Oh, look, there's Evaporator. We might as well tap that while we're on our way to also annihilating those fleshy beings over there.
Pretty much. Yeah. So, not really going to do this against Dark Troopers, but I think I remember playing a game of VAPs and my opponent was setting up very conservatively, and I'm like, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go all in. So I think he placed a VAP he's probably range 2.5, almost 3 from my deployment. And I was like, I'm going straight in for that. Cause I have Yoda, I have Chewie. And what I did was I just set them up, and I was pretty much just okay, if you bring a unit to touch your VAP, you are now, I think we've called it the slingshot. You've given me a unit that Yoda can dive into and be safe, and then dive into your rest of your army. So
it's a staging point.
Way. It's a staging point.
For sure.
Yes. And so if the terrain sets up really good, I like to do that way. So having a conservative opponent against VAPs is really beneficial for me, because then I just use it as a staging point, and I say, and I kind of put you kind of talked about walking a tightrope. I kind of put them in a position to where they have to make a move and sacrifice a unit in order to win the game. And that's just my play style. And that's just how I like to play it. I've done the slow play, and honestly, it's slow. Some people get mad at it.
It can be very slow. But
it's slow.
Intercept can be slow. Key positions can be slow. Hostage can be slow. Being slow isn't unique to VAPs and isn't a reason to hate on it, haters.
It's true. Yeah. And I think a lot of people have been like, oh, it's like a tie game. You're always going to start off tied,
Exactly.
And I'm
but
you don't. And that's one of the aspects I really like about VAPs. So VAPs is probably one of my favorite deployments, and I like how we both love it. I mean, not deployments, objectives for different reasons.
We love it for different reasons, but I think we love it more than other people for the same reason, in the sense that we recognize that it doesn't start tapped.
It doesn't.
And that's where a lot of the beauty comes in, because what you say is exactly right. It feels awesome when they don't even get a chance to tap it. When I first started playing Yoda Arcs, before it was cool, when I was actually feeling like a hipster, I played a VAPS game against, it was a Boba IG, lots of sniper gun line. And I had the tiebreaker. So technically speaking, I could sit back. But I know even with arcs and Yoda and clones, like over the course of 6 turns, they can plinky me. So I said, okay, I've got all this scout. I'll just shove it towards your Vap that has like not the, there's less of your army over there. And they had to, it was like some shores and a mortar and stuff and some other things over there. And it's just like, okay, well, if you want to go attack it, cool. But if you want to go tap your Vap, great. But I'm attacking you. And they had to say, okay, well, I guess we got to sit and attack now. And then they evaporated. And then they couldn't tap that Vap. And then it doesn't really matter if I lose something or whatnot, right? Like, it's just, you're putting them in a bind. No win situations. It's awesome.
It is. It's really good.
It's not boring.
Have you ever been in a situation where, like, Vaps, to where they put a Vap way far away and they put one unit just to tap it? And then
Yes.
I love it because the speeders, because I like running speeders, they just go for that. They're like, okay, they kill you before you may get one tap in, but like, we're gonna take you out before. Or
because the Vaps have to start range 1 away.
Yeah.
And you can't start in base contact, which doesn't really change the action economy. But if they don't have scout or guidance or anything, or pull the strings, no unit, unless they're speed 3, but most of your speed 2 units, your rebel troopers, your storm troopers, your clones, your B1s, B2s, whatever, they're not going to be able to tap turn 1 because they can't move tap, so they got to double move. And that means turn 2, they can't tap twice. You can't do the same action twice. So they only tap once. So by turn 3, by the first activation of turn 3, it's quite possible your speeders have burned them down if that's just a single unit. Because you just send everything there and shaboom, shaboom, shaboom. That's all she wrote.
Shaboom.
Or maybe, before they even go act turn 1, put a suppression on them. Now they can move. Next turn they'd have to move tap. Oh wow, they have another suppression on them. And that just buys you even more time.
Yep. Yeah. So all of this to say, some pros and cons don't do. I would not recommend putting only one unit to tap a Vap. I generally, this is kind of Seth's tactics from Bombad Generals, generally like to have my Vaps closer to my army, not necessarily far off, but so that it's defensible if like I lose someone, or if like I lose a unit that I was planning on tapping, that I can have another unit go and pivot to then tap the Vap. Yeah, that's
even if that unit successfully taps and like returns to your army, you don't want to have it so far away that it's like, oh shoot, turn 4 and 5, Yoda just speed rocketed over there, and now I just can't get there fast enough.
super good feeling to do, by the way.
Also a great feeling, because you might just not have the actions to return to that Vap. I think it's very similar in a sense to our discussion about how close you place your key positions.
Yeah.
Because if you try to put one so far in the back, so it's safer, it can actually kind of mess things up for you, because it can become a liability if you aren't able to capture it. Vaps, maybe less so, maybe more so, kind of depends. How close do you like putting your Vaps? At a minimum, they're going to be range 2 because they've got to be range 2 from each other. Are you always going as close as possible to kind of keep your army bunched?
Yeah.
Or are you spreading them out a little bit?
Mainly closer, just as a clone player, closer, and then trying to have my army just be in the middle of them too. Of course, this could all change depending on the terrain type and everything. I also generally like having it next to a terrain piece, so I have some line of sight blockers by that as well. The only times I think I've done it like farther apart is like an advanced position game, where I'm playing deployment and I'm actually on the defense side. Normally I'm actually going to like just pull back, like not like so advanced position, you can deploy way on the corner and then like which advanced position VAPs, try to never play that if you're on the offensive.
That will be a slower game, probably. Yeah.
Yes. Just because there's so much distance between like your deployment.
And that again goes back to, if you are going to be playing a VAPS game, you do have some agency to determine the deployment potentially, which means you can make sure things stay a little closer and maybe puts your opponent in a bind because, I don't have a great spot to put my VAP. If you have to beat the aggressor, you probably don't want to play. The further the VAPs start, the more likely it is that they can tap no consequences before you're able to threaten that VAP.
Yep. So that I'm going to be maybe together. I'm generally going to try to stay within range, right outside of range 2.
Yeah, usually for me, I would say I want it to be a bit beyond range 2. Because I don't want a Jedi to come sit between the two VAPs and threaten both of them at once.
That's fair.
I don't want that to happen because then it's just a lot more work of like, they're going to come in, force push, move around, body block, and they can go either way. Oh no, right? Like I don't want that. Versus it's like, hey, if they're going to come and attack my VAP, you got to commit to one. Now, it's going to be a little tougher these days with burst of speed because then, they've got speed 3 potentially, and then you've got to be really far apart. So, I don't know. But that's just kind of a consideration of like the closer together, it's potentially a little easier for your opponent to threaten both.
Yep.
But honestly, like I still deploy them at range 2 of each other quite a lot. So it's not a big deal. And then the other thing I guess I would say about forcing the VAPs closer together, it doesn't happen very often, and especially not in a competitive environment. But if you want a really fun game of VAPs, play like Battle Lines or Disarray or Hemmed In.
Hemmed In VAPs. Crazy. That's crazy. Man.
Disarray VAPs is nuts.
Disarray.
I played against Johnny, who we've had on the podcast, friend of the podcast, teammate of ours on Jar Jar
Karma 5-5.
Karma 5-5. I played a Disarray VAPs game with him probably about a year, 2 years ago, where the first VAP tap was him tapping my Vaporator because it was just a madhouse.
That's nuts.
Of where everything was going on. It's a good time. Nuts. And some people might be like, why are you putting battle lines in there? And that's because of the spacing. Depending on where they put their first VAP, you can set it up so that it's like enemy VAP, your VAP, enemy VAP, your VAP. So you're just kind of intertwined, and it kind of creates these... those two VAPs in the center kind of are very contested and can be interesting. But like, Hemmed In and Disarray VAPs is
that's what I would talk about. Like, how do you manage like a aggro placement of your second VAP?
Oh, like if someone
if you're going
forward
first,
deploys to try,
or because like you can kind of force, because of the range 2 thing, you can kind of force your opponent on where they can place their VAP.
It depends. It can be kind of tricky. I think usually it would be more for the usually the first VAP that gets put down, it's an open board. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be unlikely to you can't really force anything when you've got an open board. The second VAP might, like in that battle line scenario, maybe you can kind of force something in that. Third VAP potentially too. So that it's kind of the second or third VAPs that I'd be on the lookout.
Yeah.
So you can kind of keep an eye out as to be on the aggressor. If you're trying to defend against that, I'd say obviously usually when you put your first VAP down, you kind of know where your second is going to be. You've got a plan, or maybe two viable locations. So you can, if you're going to put them in spot A and spot B, think, hey, if I put it in spot A, is there a way that they can mess up my VAP placement? That doesn't hurt them. Obviously, they could do something crazy that makes you do a weird VAP placement, but then their VAP is in a terrible position, so they're not going to do that. So kind of think like, if I put it in spot A, can they mess me up? Versus if I put it in spot B, can they mess me up? And then just put it in the whichever one they can't mess up, hopefully there's one, put it there first, and then just put in the other spot on your second deployment.
I agree.
So just kind of forward thinking there. But yeah, I think those kind of weird things can happen when you place more on the edge to start. I'd have to kind of really think through the scenarios because that's a good question. But if you place it more on the edge, just by virtue of being near the edge of the board, you're kind of zoning off a whole section because you can't go off the edge of the board. And then into the opposite direction is their VAP. Then you kind of have nowhere but the other side of their VAP to go. So that would be the watch out there.
Yep.
But as I say, like those kind of games don't necessarily happen all that much. They are very chaotic. I think it might go back to our conversation about like, it's a bit different. Chaos is a bit different than variance because there's definitely people that thrive in chaos more than others, I think.
Yes.
And I think
Han players. I'm thinking about Han Solo players.
I mean Yoda players, Jedi
It's
players,
also
I think
true,
generally can thrive in chaos. And like I think I like chaos and can thrive in chaos, but I think it's just a very dicey thing on a competitive level to like to be planning like, hey, I want to have a Sab Vaps game in, you know, round 5 of Worlds or whatever when I need a win and want to create chaos, and it's like, I don't know, maybe I get a lot more nervous in that scenario.
That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. So I think some lists that are really good at VAPs, honestly, any like trooper centered lists. I don't think vehicle lists are really great at it because they can't tap the VAPs.
They can threaten the VAPs, as you mentioned. They can threaten the VAPs.
But like I would say, like a vehicle centered list is like a double AATST.
Here's the thing, though.
Oh, okay.
Here's the thing, though. Think of like a double. You said double ATST, but let's think about double AAT.
Okay.
Point of that list, like that's a vehicle list where you just have 2 big ass vehicles shielding your army.
It's fair
that they're hard to kill, and they have long range, so they can hit your opponent from long range. They can kind of shield your army, so all your B1s just go and tap VAPs, and you'll probably win on kill points. The problem is if you do lose a tank, you're not happy, and there's enough impact out there that maybe you lose a tank, but it's still pretty hard to kill a tank through 8 repair, which those lists bring. So I think it's not necessarily terrible, but if you're really trooper light, like if you're like some sort of Tempest or Blizzard with 2 ATST, 3 bikes, and just like bare bones core, then you could be in a world of trouble potentially, because you could just like run out of bodies to effectively protect and tap VAPs.
Yep. I think like Iden sniper lists are really good at VAPs because they can do that tightrope really well. And infinite range snipers just have to see something and then they can kill it and win on kill points. Yeah, so that's really, I think Yoda's good for both of the reasons we were saying.
Yoda's amazing because not only is he can double tap VAPs on his 1 pip, and he's fast, but guidance is just wild. Yeah. It can help get your guys to tap VAPs quicker and get them out of danger to shrink that window when you're vulnerable. He can, if he's, I was talking about having a Jedi between 2 VAPs, but I mean, Yoda could be like on 1 VAP, but also have guidance to a guy on another VAP.
Yeah.
So he can say, hey, well, instead of me going move, tap, VAP, I can play my 1 pip, guidance a move, guidance a tap.
Yeah.
So that opens up a lot of shenanigans. Honestly, lots of people should like VAPs. Gunlines. Yeah. Gunlines, like if you can wallop people at range, if you can get that window, if you can get huge damage onto them in that window when they're trying to tap the VAPs, that's really good.
Yeah.
But also if you're an aggro list that can move up the board fast enough to harass them, then you're also going to like VAPs.
Oh yeah,
honestly.
Dropping like a full Black Sun unit right next to your opponent's VAP with an AA5.
Or 6 of them or whatever, right? Having not a lot of trooper units in the game want to walk up and spend a couple turns tapping a VAP when 6 Black Suns or 6 Wookiees are charging at them. They're just kind of there like ding ding ding. Oh Oh, here they come. Oh my.
Oh my, oh my.
Oh boy. Oh no. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's flexible, honestly. It's. I get that some people don't want to play it in a non-800 point list these days because it is still, for all we talk about, it is still definitely better to be the aggressor versus the it's better to be the defender and not be the aggressor. So you don't want to like have it in your deck and then be the one who's disadvantaged. But I still find it hard to drop Vaps, even when I'm running 797, 795, what have you. It's still, I don't know, I feel comfortable playing it, I guess, at the end of the day. So I don't mind, hey, if I got to be the aggressor. Like, honestly, there's a lot of situations where I'd rather play a Vaps game, a KG Vaps game, than a KG hostage exchange game. Because hostage can devolve into the same situation, but if they can yank that hostage out of dodge really fast, then there's not a lot that, that window shifts, right? You might have less window when they're exposed in a hostage game compared to a Vaps game, then it might devolve into the same game state in the long term. So honestly, a lot of the time I'd rather play Sab Vaps. Yeah, but that's just me. Since Yoda both suck. He's going to mess you up in both.
This is true.
Whatever.
That's all I have to say about Vaps.
That's all I got to say. I like it. You started us off on a much more positive note by asking why I love Vaps. So I got to rant from a place of love rather than a place of frustration. And that's good. That's good. But I made a New Year's resolution to be more, I don't know, what's the good word for it? Controversial, crazy. I want to be more over the top on this podcast. That's what people want, right? That's what draws people in.
That's what gets the views.
Yeah, hot takes, irrational love or hatred
takes on AMG.
Things. Yeah,
and then people will listen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll dip into that a bit. I'll look right at the camera. Yeah. If you hate Vaps, come play me at Worlds, all right? Yeah, let's throw down on Vaps. See what happens. Well, maybe that's unfair because they hate Vaps, so they don't want to throw down on Vaps.
That was very controversial.
Yeah. You're a hater, and I'll put you in your place. How about that? There we go. Watch me go 0-3 day one at Worlds now. Yeah. Talking about, I feel confident about having a skill advantage in a lot of games, and then just get wrecked.
I'll just bring I'll bring the Star Wars deck building game. We'll just play that.
Hey, I played a lot of that last Worlds. If I lose, I'll say I'll blame Seth for not giving me enough practice games.
Okay.
Yeah. Bring it full circle.
Yes. Blame me.
I think the Star Wars deck building game is getting an expansion, so that'll be exciting.
Is it really? I just got it for Christmas, so I'm really...
I think on like my second to last day in Canada before moving, I played Star Wars deck building game.
It's just a good, quick game. If you haven't played the deck building game, Star Wars, Fantasy Flight, right?
Yes, Fantasy Flight. Our old overlords.
Alma Mater or something. I don't know.
But honestly, like, it's very handy. Like, hey, you go to because that's the thing with Legion. Like, maybe it's going to be 2.5 hours. Maybe you're done your game in 1.5. Why not just sit down, play Star Wars Deck Builder for an hour?
Why not?
I came to the store to play games today, so let's do it.
Let's do it.
Now we're truly off the track. So,
all right.
Stay stay aggressive and stay Gungan.
This has been the Bombad Generals.
Listening to Bombad Generals is not scientifically proven to make you a better Legion player. Side effects may include bad dice rolls, missed triggers, aim losses, bankruptcy, divorce, vomiting, and sudden death. Ask your doctor if Bombad Generals is right for you.